Welcome back to another episode of For Such Time as This, a podcast about calling, timing, and trusting God in the season that you're actually in, not just the one you hope to be in. I'm your host, Bethany. This season is called Creative Calling, so I'm talking to a whole bunch of different creatives in the ministry field. So sit back, relax, and be expectant for what the Lord might have for you in this episode. All right, guys, today I have my friend Natasha, who is the marketing director at Union Church, which is a multi-campus church up here in the DMV, but also has campuses down in North Carolina.
That's right.
So let's just start at the beginning. Okay. How did you get started in the marketing field? Was it in a church environment or outside of a church environment?
No, so fun fact, I didn't become a Christian until I was 26 years old.
Okay.
I didn't grow up in church. I, was the, typical like Catholic, Hispanic, where you go to church on Easter and Christmas, and that's about all your relationship is. I actually became a Christian with I met my husband, and all of that kind of led to, I have a degree in fashion marketing. I went to, as I call it, the Project Runway School, because back then, that's when Project Runway had just come out. It was Parsons. So I went there for fashion marketing because I can't draw or sew. So I said, let me go and market clothes instead.
There you go.
So I ended up on that journey for about a good 10 years. I worked in cosmetics, and I moved to the DMV area probably a couple of years after, which I'm going to age myself, but it was like 2013. And I found a church in DC, and I was there for 9 years.
Okay.
And I just made that transition from sales cosmetic marketing into church marketing. And so it was a completely different, out of the blue, didn't even think it was going to happen, but it was all just a call from God.
Yeah. Did you move up here for that job, or you moved up here and then that's just the job?
So I did what they probably tell you not to do. I moved up here for a guy.
Oh, okay.
I was dating my now husband, but we were dating, and I lived like an hour away, and I just got tired of the drive just to, the DMV traffic's not fun.
Yeah, no.
So I moved up here and got a good job in cosmetics, and I traveled a lot. But yeah, no, I moved up here for a boy.
I love that. That happens, and it worked out.
It worked out. So I can't say it doesn't work out, but I don't always sign off on it.
So how long were you at the church in DC, and when did you move to Union?
For 9 years. So I was there from 2014 to 2023.
Wow.
So I was there for almost 10 years, was planted there. I went through a lot of stuff in my personal life, and that's where I really discovered my relationship with God and the church. And so through, as they tell you to do, which is great, is serving and pouring your life into the local church, I discovered a lot of gifts about myself that I didn't know I had. Even though I did marketing and sales for cosmetics, it was a totally different, they took a chance on me. They saw a gift in me and was like, hey, do you want to do this as a job? And I was like, never really thought about it. So I said, sure, why not? I was looking to get out of cosmetics because I was basically working retail.
Okay.
And I was just like, okay, I don't really want to do this anymore. So in 2019, literally a month after I got married, so I had a whole life change. I got married and I started a whole new career within a month of each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were serving at the church doing what before they were like,
so I was actually, fun fact, in production.
Okay.
So I'm the prime example of like, I did everything at church. It was a smaller church too. So you're always doing all the things. And so I was doing production. So I was helping with like cameras and broadcast, and I was helping with social. So that's kind of how they kind of saw what I was doing. But while I was doing that, I was working for a friend who had a small business doing marketing. So they knew what I was like dabbling in. And so they were like, hey, we're looking for a communications director, which is just another way to say a marketing director. And that's how I kind of got started in that. And then I came to Union in 2023 when I was actually looking for a full-time job. I was working part-time. I had transitioned off of staff at my last church and just looking for something new. And so about a year later is when I came to Union.
I love that.
Yeah, what a journey I've been on.
So I guess we kind of already answered my next question of like, have you always thought that you'd do like church marketing? But let's say once you were in cosmetics marketing.
Yeah.
And then you found Christ, then was it like, oh yeah, I'm going to do marketing for the church? No, because you were just serving and they just said,
Yeah.
you want to work here? And then that's how we ended up here.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of just one of those stories where you're like, yeah, I poured my life into church. And I just let God do what he does. I just like gifts kind of come out, and people who saw potential in me and knew that I was looking for a new career path and something new. And it was like, hey, would you be interested in doing this? And it turned into one of the greatest things that I can say has been a part of my life, because I loved, I learned all about the difference between like church marketing and ministry and working, advertising lipstick. You know what I mean? So it's a completely different thing because you're not selling a product.
Right.
So it had to be, I had to learn a whole different aspect, which I loved. And still, I was like, hey, and at the time I was like, hey, I get paid to be in church. Really, that's not it. But that's how you feel.
Yeah, that is how you feel.
How you feel. You're like, I get to do this. It's great.
Yeah.
And it truly impacted my life. So it wasn't, I just wanted to give back to, the kingdom that really did a lot for me personally back then. Because I was young. I was a Christian at 26, and then I was figuring out, that's when you start figuring out life anyway.
Yeah.
And so figuring out your life and figuring out what a relationship with God looks like is two journeys that you don't expect to go on at 26.
Yeah. So just a quick rundown for everybody that doesn't know what a marketing director at a church does. Give me a short synopsis.
Short synopsis would be at our, I'm going to do it at like kind of what I know at our scale too at Union, but just it's email marketing, it's website copy. We do have videos, so it's copy for video scripts, social media campaigns. And it's not like the same thing as a social media manager or director. Those are two different roles, but a lot of places they are together. So I do say that. And then advertising, Google ads, mailers, digital ads, all of those things. It's getting the name out there.
Yeah. Which is marketing in general.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Was there a key moment where you realized, creativity can be a form of ministry? Just when you were working at the church, I guess.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of the times we see creativity as just a gift that you have, which it is, but we don't also understand that like it is a gift from God.
Yeah.
And he did ultimately create. It's in Genesis,
Right.
He created the world. So it's a natural gift that we have.
Right.
Just some of us are use it in a different way. And so a lot of us are great storytellers. And this is kind of the area where you are storytelling. And it's necessarily you're telling other people's stories and how they've been impacted. And so using that in ministry, it's truly like it's stewarding that gift very differently. Because I think a lot of people, like if you think of a singer, they steward their gift very differently, but it's still creative, but it's totally different. So it's how you steward it and who you surrender it to is really going to be the impact that you make. And so for me, it was like, I can take the gift of writing and the gift of storytelling that I have and use it in this way for people to encounter, God differently, which is great.
That's really good because, like you said in Genesis, and we're all made in his image and he created. So we all have that creative side of us. We just have to figure out which part of us is the creative side.
Right. And then what that gift is, like I can't create graphics to save my life, but there's someone else that has that gift. And so it's okay. Like I think we all think that we have to have like all of these amazing gifts to, impact the kingdom, or you see somebody else's gift and you're like, oh man, I wish I can do that. But really, like we all have something different. And that's what makes the kingdom of God so great, because we were all had the same gift. I mean, we'd all not be either doing the same thing, or we'd all just have a lot of egos.
Yeah.
The entire time. Yeah. But you know what I mean? So I think it's just understanding that your gift is yours and God gave it to you. So it's how am I going to steward this to advance the kingdom? It's pretty important.
Yeah, for sure. So with storytelling, what are some like early experiences that you remember that impacted you about storytelling? Like, what's one of the first stories that like sticks in your mind that like, oh, I can piece this together?
Yeah, so before I even started working like at a church, my best friend had a blog back when blogs were, a thing.
Fun, yeah.
When people were like writing their life away, she had a blog that was called Testimony Tuesday. You probably can't find it anymore. It was a very long time ago.
Aw.
But she would literally, she's a photographer, so she would take photos of people and we would talk to them about their story. And then I would write it and put it on the blog. And it'd be a way of like, this is like we say before we started doing good big testimony videos now.
Yeah.
But it was a way for us to show people like, this is God moving through everyday people. Like we all have a life that we're living, good, bad, trials, and but this is how God moves through it. And this is how you see the other side. And so when we did that, I was like, oh man, like I can take someone's story and then I can make it so one, people can see God in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can also like see themselves and like, okay, God did that for them. They could do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of how it started. And that was 2011.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yes.
That was a while ago.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's really cool. You just still telling testimony stories to this day on a different capacity.
Each day in a different capacity. But I do remember the day when it was like typing on a blog.
That's awesome. I love that. So marketing in ministry is an interesting balance because you're communicating truth and hope and love and all different kind of things that you need to communicate to people. What does creative calling look like in your role as a marketing director?
So with creative calling, it's really understanding the balance of the calling itself and then the creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times there's this tension that we have to kind of figure out, okay, am I going to steward this assignment well? Am I going to steward this project or this person, if we're doing a testimony video, their story well?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really figuring out for yourself, and even for me through the journey of like, what is the story I'm telling and how am I telling it and how am I marketing this in a way that's having people understand not just God, because a lot of times people can't understand it right away,
Right.
but it's more of like, how am I taking this piece and making it relatable for them?
Mm-hmm.
And so can they see themselves in it? Am I making this piece that makes someone want to know Jesus more or want to take their next step? Because at the end of the day, if that's not what's happening, then it's just like a product not being sold or we're missing the mark.
Right.
And so it's understanding that it's kind of bigger than what we think it is,
Mm-hmm.
but the pressure shouldn't be that high. It sounds crazy to say, but it's like God's still going to do what he's going to do.
That's true.
Even if I have the period in the wrong part of the word, right? Like it's still going to happen.
Right.
It's just understanding, the creative calling as a marketing director. And I think a lot of times, it's about stewardship too. I think the biggest thing is, how am I stewarding this calling correctly? And a lot of times I think we don't realize the impact of that. We're always talking about stewarding, anything else in life. But for this, it's a truly something that God is like entrusting you with.
Mm-hmm.
Or in my case, it's entrusting me with it. And so what am I going to do and how am I going to steward this well?
Yeah. How do you balance that portion of it with the like strategy behind marketing? Like, how do you make the strategy to not miss the mark?
Yeah.
But still have the creativity and the ministry side of it?
Yeah. So I think this is where that tension is.
Yeah.
Because let's say for a bigger company, we're just going to throw it out there, not really an example, but like Apple, their strategy, most of the time, strategy is always number one. Like you're like in marketing, it's like, hey, what's the strategy behind this and how are we going to execute it? And I have found that it's the reverse in ministry. Like it's important to have the strategy, but I could have all the strategy in the world, but if I didn't deliver the message correctly, it didn't hit anyone, it doesn't matter that I got all the views, all the likes. But if no one got impacted by it, then truly I missed the mark on it. Yeah. And so I think it's understanding, is this project, did this turn out the way that God would want this story to be told? Or if I do it in a way of like this email, is this email that I'm writing helping people understand, what this event is? And it's not just announcing that it's an event. It's like, is this, group season, like I'm using an example from church, like what's the point of joining a group? Well, is to find community. And then this is how. And so it's understanding that I could literally do all the strategy in the world, but if the mission is not there, then it's almost like the strategy fell on deaf ears. And so it's understanding that there has to be a balance. And I think it's so hard when you do marketing and ministry because you're like, yeah, then you have to do this and you have to have that. And it's like sometimes you have all the pieces in place, but sometimes you hit the mark wrong on one thing and the strategy goes out the window, whether you wanted to or not. But having it is important. It's like that 10. Yeah. You're like, I have to still have it. Yeah. But I also have to allow God to do what he's going to do in it.
Yeah.
So it's having both.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I'm thinking like about my experience like with Chick-fil-A and marketing, and we have tension too, but it's different, of course, because it's not ministry, but we have tension of like the operations side of the store and the marketing side of the store. Is like the operations team, I'm always going to them like, we're gonna do this, it's gonna be so cool, and they're like, okay, that's gonna make us really busy, and I'm like, that's the point. It's kind of the point. We're trying to make money here. Right. I'm like, I'm trying to bring people in to get the products, and they're like, but we have to make sure like we have the staffing and all this, so it's like the balance of the tension between like marketing and operations.
Yeah, right. And then, the strategy helps execute the creativity. And so that's why I said having the strategy is important because it's how we execute. It's how we get the assignment done or how we get the mission out there.
Right.
But it's relying a lot of times in marketing, we rely so much on the strategy because it's like, this is how we're going to get here. And we forget that there's a whole other entity that needs to come into it. Like you have to allow God into what you're doing. And if it doesn't, and you're going to see, he's like, no, this isn't going to work. I'm going to turn it this way. And then you get a completely different outcome. And you're like, oh, I was doing this wrong. And so it's sort of shifting the mindset that not everything is always going to be black and white, even though we might want it to be.
Yeah, very true. How do you stay in tune with what God's doing across so many different campuses in one church?
So communication is key.
Yeah.
I think that it's me as a person and all of us, we can't be in multiple places at once.
Right.
No matter how much we want to. And so the communication is always going to be important because you're going to need to have, you have like the pastoral team, you have other campus pastors. They're the ones that are there at the campus and they're shepherding the church there. And so you're understanding like what the needs are for them. And so that is going to help bring in a different type of strategy where it's like this one campus could say, I really need this or I really need that. And so it's communicating that in a way, and it's still marketing. It's just very different.
Yeah.
It's like going into a different state and you're like, oh, they're going to need this and they don't relate to that. Like smaller scale, but when I was working in cosmetics and being in the Baltimore area, I knew that I couldn't have an event in football season on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Why? Because no one's going to show up. They're all going to be at the Ravens game.
Right.
And so the one time no one listened to me and I had an event, I made no money that day. And so it's knowing your area and like really understanding, okay, so this area has this campus has that. And it's really, really staying in tune with that. And then just allowing God to kind of say, like, we are still multiple campuses, but we are still one church and we have the same, we're all like, it has to feel cohesive everywhere. And so even though everybody may have a different focus or a different need, it's all going to have to be the same voice. So it's learning to use what the mission of the church is and applying that. So you're not hearing the same or different, not the same, the different message across all the campuses. And that's a difficult balance sometimes, but I think the key is to understanding that you are given that gift to steward that well. And so when you know the mission, you know what you're going after, the rest will just fall into place. And it kind of seems like it'll be a little harder, but really a lot of times the communication is going to be key in that area. Because you're not talking to anybody. You're not going to know what's going on.
Right, exactly. But on the flip side, is there a point where you're like, I'm assuming you have like point people, because if you just have communication and you're like overloaded with communication from all different people from all different campuses, it's going to be like, everybody's telling me something different about different things. So you have like point people at each campus that are like, this is my communicator.
Yeah. So it really will just go down to like the campus pastor. It's the campus pastor at the campus. Like they're the ones that are a little more in tune with their campus. Now it depends on the topic too. I'll be honest. Like if it's about groups, I'm most likely going to talk to a groups person at that campus because they're going to know. If it's outreach, I'll talk to them. So it actually depends on the topic or what I'm trying to. But if it is an overall like general consensus, I'll talk to the campus pastor. But a lot of times if it's an event, or a particular campaign, I should say, it's going to be that person at that campus, because most of our campuses have like a staff member that is in that role of like, hey, I'm the groups person. So a lot of times when groups launch, I'll be like, what kind of groups do you need? What are the needs of that campus? And so they'll tell me. And so each campus will probably be like, I need this people for this group or that group. And so it's learning that and keeping that at the forefront, because when you're not there, you're really relying on those people to be like your eyes and ears. For sure.
What methods do you use to communicate with the different congregations though? Do you just communicate with the entire congregation of Union Church, like through social media and through email and all that kind of stuff, or do you make specific communication with each campus?
Yeah, so there is multiple different avenues. If we're doing email, we actually have a email list for each campus.
Okay.
So there's one for each campus. There's one for the church as a whole. Our social media is more of a whole church thing. But as far as like direct communication, the emails are going to be where we kind of segregate.
Okay.
Hey, this message is going to go to this campus. This message is going to go to that one. When it's very specific to the campus. Yeah, that's how we keep that kind of on the forefront.
Hey, you guys, it's me again. Don't worry, I'll be right back with our guests. I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you so much for spending time with us today. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Let's sit and think about what might have been said that can relate to your life today. And if you're enjoying it, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, comment, all the things. You can find us on YouTube for Such Time as This with Bethany Garner, or you can find us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. All right, let's get back to them. So how do you see storytelling as part of building a connection and community in the church?
So the storytelling is always interesting in the church and the connection, because you have to understand the mentality of what you're speaking into. And so our testimony videos and just telling other people's story, believe it or not, is the best and easiest way for you to get people to like really understand what you're trying to get. And a lot of times people are thrown a lot of information at them all the time.
Yeah.
Like we are scrolling and there's tons of stuff coming into our brain at all times of the day.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things is through the storytelling of someone else's story, and that's how we can weave it into like almost every event that we have, there is a testimony video. And the point of that is for us to show three things to someone: who God is in this person's life, what they spoke into them, and the impact that it made. And so a lot of times in those moments, we're showing, someone who in the audience of the day, and I say audience not in a big way, but people sitting at church, you kind of see it and you're like, I see this person who's probably going through something very similar of me, but I've seen what God did and he can do it for them. He could do it for me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that's like marketing in a way we don't realize in the church.
Right.
Because we're trying to, at the end of the day, get people saved and impacting their life for the better. And so through that, it's seeing somebody else. We're relational people, whether we admit it or not. And a lot of times when we see somebody else and we see them coming out of the other side, like we always see someone who's like going through the worst thing ever, And then we see them on the other side of it, and we're always like, how did you do X, Y, and Z?
Exactly.
And a lot of times you'll get a lot of different answers, but it's because we see ourselves in other people's struggle. And so seeing it is the best way, and seeing that come out of the other side, because I think that's the greatest story that's ever told. And that's how you weave the creativity of that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because you just want to make sure that it's easy to tell God's story.
Right.
But a lot of people won't understand his story until they actually can see themselves in it.
Yeah.
And even though like that sounds bigger than we can imagine, we are more likely to really see the impact that God will make if we see it through somebody else. And that's why we always say like our testimony is so important to other people because of that reason. And that's like the best way that we can kind of incorporate showing what God is doing. But it's through the story of other people's triumphs and also their, valleys. There's a lot that can happen in the valley.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of glory that comes out of it. But a lot of people don't think that there's great stories when you're in the valley. They're like, I'd rather talk about, all the good things God did. I'm like, yeah, well, he still did good things down there too.
Right.
And trust me, I've been down there a lot. And so, but those are the moments that people really understand any sort of story you're giving them about, forgiveness, families being restored. There's just things that people go through, and they're really impacted through other people sharing their story, for sure.
Is it hard to share someone else's story while still making sure it points back to Jesus, so you don't have the focus solely on someone else? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so a lot of that is understanding that the actual struggle itself is the person. So it's not necessarily who they are. It's like, what is the struggle that they're going through? What was their state at that mind? And then it's showing through the storytelling what God is doing. Ultimately, you're making him the hero of the story, because he is.
Yeah.
And so it's still highlighting that person, but you have to kind of in a moment show them, and so what they're going through, and then bringing that to the other side of like, but this is what God did in their story. And it's of coaching them through the language of like when we do a video, coaching them to say, this is what God did. Because a lot of times our own strength, we're like, I did that. It's like we did, but we did it because God really carried us through it. So it's that tension of like, yes, this person, we're telling their story, but ultimately God is the hero of the story because he's the one who redeemed, or he's the one who healed, or whatever the triumph is, the victory. Like it's bringing that moment out and ending it on that note. Like usually we'll end a video or a story and it's like, God did this, and it's usually like that's where we end it, where it's like there's no room for anyone to not understand clearly that this person's life was transformed because of God.
Yeah, that's cool. Is it often when you're telling other people's stories, do you let them tell the story and then you come back with, this is how we can reframe it? Or do you like word it for them in the first place?
Yeah, so it depends.
Okay.
I work a lot with the creative team, and they're the ones that do more of the interviewing, I should say. So I'm not going to totally, because I don't know, I could be wrong. But a lot of times whenever we were doing it in more of like writing form, usually I would just have a conversation with the person, ask them about their story, their life, what they went through. And ask them questions about it. Like, how did this feel? God, and it's more of just like pulling it all out of them.
Okay.
And then going back and getting like, seeing like, okay, I want them to talk more about this, or I want them to talk more about how they felt when God did blah, 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 or just, it's like going back and then redoing it again, not the whole thing, but it's asking a question of like, just to kind of pull out what the message you're trying to. But the first thing is just to let people talk.
Yeah.
Because that's where you'll figure out where the story is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. How do you measure success in the ministry community?
So it's a different metric, of course, for sure. But this could be a gray area. Some people, some places might disagree with me, so it's fine. But really success is impact. Like who people's lives being impacted. For me, that is, the key to everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, and it sounds bad to say because this is a marketing, like, I'll get my hand slapped on the wrist for this. It doesn't matter, like, how many people open an email. It doesn't matter the open rate compared to the industry. It doesn't matter if a clip went viral, but it matters to me if a family's life is impacted.
Yeah.
It matters to me if a marriage is restored after a marriage night event. And it doesn't matter if it's only one, because Jesus came for the one.
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter how many people, but impact is always the metric. It's like, is this impacting people's lives? Is this changing lives? Because at the end of the day, if it's not changing lives and people aren't surrendering their life to Christ, then it almost feels like you're not winning at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a totally different metric that I think. And of course, we want all the good numbers, right? We want people to open the email. We want the clip to be viral. You want all those things. But if it's not impacting people, if it's not causing someone to take their next step, then ultimately, I haven't done my job.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if 10 million people saw this. If not one of those 10 million people did anything, then to me, that's not a win.
Yeah.
And how you know that is through like conversations with people, and I'll go and we'll talk to like the group's directors, we'll talk to the campuses, and just, they have tons of stories of people that'll say like, I got an invite card and it changed my life because I came. And it sounds crazy, but they're like, no, they got an invite card. And it's like, I wrote the copy on that. Didn't design it because I can't design anything. But
still,
I wrote the copy.
Yeah.
Another team member designed it. Then that brought someone to church and it changed their life. To me, that's a success and that's a win.
Yeah.
Not necessarily how many people scan the QR code on it. Which that's why I said in marketing, that's like counterintuitive. That's how we measure KPIs.
Yeah.
But that's the ultimate impact. Did this impact someone's life? Did it change their life? Did they get transformed?
Yeah.
If they did it, then that's not the win.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a specific project that you can think of from your church ministry that like really impacted you still today?
So, there's a couple. One of the biggest ones that I would say had like truly impacted my life was trying to think how I want to word this one, but I'm like, how do I want to word this in a way that's not weird? At my last church, we didn't have a women's ministry. And so we had started it, a friend of mine, we're still friends to this day. We started a women's ministry at the church, and we just watched, like, I think sometimes you start something and you know how you hope that it turns out bigger than you imagined.
Yeah.
And we spent so much time and energy just pouring into what we thought women wanted. And just the impact of it. I mean, years later, even I'm not there anymore and I'm watching them still do it. But it's a beautiful thing to see that when you realize a need in people's lives, they just needed community. They needed women, because it's very hard in this day and age to find women that are not trying to trample over each other.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I said that. It's true.
Yeah, it is.
But when you really find that people really want community and they really want women to be just rallying behind each other and just building that, and a bunch of women worshiping God, it really did something for me. And then I was like, this was before I went into ministry. So this is probably like the very first time that I was like, oh man, like this is truly making an impact.
Yeah.
And then seeing it years later, I mean, I haven't been to that church in like 4 years, but to see like them still doing it and all the things that like they're doing now, it's almost like being just so excited that you help plant a seed and then you watched God grow it, and you're just like, oh, like stewarding that so well, like in that season. That's why stewarding what God gives you now, even if you don't ultimately have it, is truly just like the most impactful moment of my life, because it gave me so much like inspiration, and I think it catapulted my career in ministry for sure.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love to hear that. So something we talk about a lot on this podcast is like obedience and but burnout.
Yeah.
So how do you stay grounded in like the fast pace of like such a big ministry that you're in?
Yeah. The key to that, and it's going to sound very cliche, but of course, is rest.
Yeah.
But a different kind of more of a rest. It's like marketing can be very, not, I don't want to say mundane, but it's a very cycle,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
there's always an event coming up.
Yeah.
There's always another Sunday. There's always another invite card. And so a lot of things feel very repetitive. And so I'm like, okay, you get burnt out or you get kind of tired in the mundane, but it's understanding that it's having your relationship with God be in an intimacy where you're like, hey, I'm going to take a few minutes of rest every single day, but also understanding that I don't have to take on the weight of the world. And I think a lot of times we get into burnout because we're trying so hard for something that's not about us.
Yeah.
And so I think that what I've watched people in ministry get burnt out, or even myself in a season that I did, is because I made it about me. I made it about the fact that I was like, I want people to see me doing this, or I want recognition, or I've seen other people, it's like, I want my face to be seen. And I think it's because our heart is not in that moment in the right place.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a recalibration of like your heart. It's like, why am I doing this? And then allowing that setback to be like, okay, I'm going to take a step back, whether it's a couple of minutes, a couple of hours, a day, to like really rest and be in that relationship, being in prayer with God and saying, am I doing this for the right reason? Am I doing this because ultimately this is about drawing people closer to you? Or am I trying to be noticed and seen?
Yeah.
And I never used to think that that was the stuff of burnout, but it becomes like we're overachieving.
Yeah.
And so it's ultimately us saying to ourselves, okay, who am I doing this for? That's being the reminder. And then why does this matter? And then am I allowing my own pride to kind of come in it so I can get some recognition for what I'm doing? Because if we are doing that, I mean, we get tired when we're doing stuff for ourselves.
Yeah.
90% of the time I'm like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But when you do stuff for other people, or when you do stuff out of the abundance of your heart because you care, you tend to not get as burnt out as you want to.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to think about. But it's only because the desire for us to be seen and known creates a different drive in us that releases to burnout. I've learned that because there's a season of my life where I was doing so much and I was like, oh, I'm burnt out because of all the things that I'm doing, when really it was me because I was doing all this for me. I wasn't doing it for anybody else but myself, which sounds bad, but ultimately I was taking the glory away from God.
Yeah. How do you specifically prioritize rest, and like what boundaries have you set for yourself that help you stay healthy in like the creative field that's just always has something new coming up?
Yeah, so I have this wonderful thing on my phone called Do Not Disturb.
Yeah.
I was like, it's on my phone. It's set every day. That's the very practical thing.
Right.
I think a lot of people don't realize you cannot pick up your phone.
Yeah.
It's okay to ignore a phone call. It's okay to ignore a text message. But the intimacy with the Holy Spirit is really important. I think a lot of times we don't realize that when we allow a few minutes of his voice to speak into us, it really recalibrates. The biggest boundary I have, the practical one, is the do not disturb. I learned that last year and it was the most amazing thing. But it's also, it sounds so cliche because a lot of people think, oh, you're in ministry, you're in church. Like, you don't need to set aside time for God. You're in church every day. And it's easy. And I've heard this many times. And so I think the reminder of like, I may be in church every day. I may be writing up for God every day. But if I haven't opened my Bible all week, I'm going to feel it just like someone who's not working in ministry.
Yeah.
And so I went through that when I first like started working in ministry. I thought because I was at church all day long, I thought because I was, doing the Lord's work every single day, that it didn't matter that if I didn't read my Bible when I went home. And I truly experienced the impact of that where I was tired and I was doing things in my own strength. And so remembering that just because you're doing ministry doesn't mean that you still don't need your own relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because that's how you hear from him. That's how he elevates your creativity. That's where you get your fresh ideas. If you're keeping that at the forefront. And it was just a pattern. Like I said, I literally was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm in church every day. And then everyone's like, I was like, no, this is not actually how it works. I still have to, the things we tell other people to do. I think in ministry, there's going to be a lot more people that will say that they'll forget to do that every single day because they're like, oh, I'm already on mission. I'm already serving God. But our own spiritual health matters too. Like if I'm not taking the time to take a day every week in Sabbath and rest just like everyone should, I'm going to feel the exhaustion. I'm going to feel the tired. If I don't take a second to do something fun that inspires me, it could be not ministry related, but I'll come back, take a vacation. All the things that we just take for granted. I think when we're serving the kingdom of God, we take for granted the things that are truly replenishing to us.
Yeah.
Because we're like, oh my gosh, like I have to worry about all of these things. And we do. Yeah. But we also, God gave us the same principles that he gives someone who's not serving in ministry, like the rest, the prayer time with him, the time in his word, like all of that is what will keep you fueled for anyone who's like in ministry or even thinking about it. Like have those habits now, because when you're running in a season where you have Christmas and New Year's and Easter's coming, like the seasons where it's busy, you need those healthy spiritual habits way ahead of time.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, while we're kind of wrapping up here, I have some closing questions for you. Okay. So what encouragement would you give someone who feels called to serve God through marketing or creativity and communications?
I would say, steward your gift wherever you're at currently. I think a lot of times when we have the gift and we have it, we want to just jump right into it. And we kind of get frustrated when it doesn't happen right away. And so it's stewarding what you have well and understanding that the gift you have been given is from God, and learning what it is and where you want to advance it in the kingdom. And then this is maybe a very taboo answer too, but it's what part of ministry do you want to use it for? Like, do you want to be in full-time ministry and use it? Or do you can still be in ministry and use your gift. Like I have a friend who doesn't work at a church, but she still does. She does prison ministry. And it's still like she's not getting paid by her church to do it. She does it because that's her heart.
Yeah.
That's her heart and that's what she does. So it's understanding what level of the ministry you want to do. Do you want to be paid full-time ministry? Do you're like, hey, I just want to, like I said, my friend did that blog. Do I just want to go and write about people's lives? Do I want to have an Instagram story where I'm highlighting, or Instagram account story, geez. I think it's understanding what area and the level of ministry. I think sometimes people think ministry and they always think I'm going to work in church, but we all have a ministry in our life, and we're all called to, preach the gospel and make disciples. So it's like, how am I going to do that? And so I think one doesn't equal the other. Again, that's a taboo answer because everyone's like, no, work at the church. No, of course. I wouldn't say not do that, but I would say it's definitely just like your spirit, your gift. It's a calling to work at a church.
Right.
Because it takes a whole different level of sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so, but you can still serve God and not get paid.
Yeah.
It just depends on your level of what you want to do and where you feel God is calling you. But stewarding that well and really just praying and relying on God to point you in that right direction. Because he will if you surrender that to him. If you make it like not about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for creatives that are in the ministry field already, whether they're volunteering or whatever they're doing, but they are struggling because they feel like they're so behind the scenes?
Yeah, I went through that. I understand how that is. The biggest thing is for everyone to, in that space, to understand, and this is a lesson that I had to learn too, is that God really works in hidden places. I think a lot of times we think that God doesn't see us unless man does. And a lot of the time that's a very, especially I feel like in 2025, I almost said 2026, but we're not there yet. We're close. That if someone doesn't see me, if I don't have a lot of followers on Instagram, I'm not seen. But God sees you no matter where you are.
Right.
And so it's taking where you are now and saying, I'm going to do whatever said assignment is, and I'm going to do it well because I'm going to plant this seed and God's going to water it. And it's also taking a heart evaluation. Like, why do I struggle with being behind the scenes so much? Is this I want to be seen by man, or do I want to be seen by God?
Yeah.
And I think that is where sometimes we can get lost in ministry. It's because we think because no one can see what we're doing that it's not being recognized. And I will boldly say that a lot of times the people that are doing things behind the scenes get a lot more recognition than people who are up front. Because we know without the behind the scenes people, things don't happen.
Yeah.
Like someone has to keep that ship moving.
Yeah.
But it's understanding that God will call you out of the hidden place when it's time. And sometimes you're in that space of saying, there's something I'm going to learn here, because we all think we want the spotlight until the spotlight's on us, and then we go crumbling down because there's something in us that wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just understanding being faithful where you're planted and understanding that God is going to elevate you at the time, that wherever that is. But then it's also just letting God do the work. Like, I'm going to keep being excellent and excellent and not in a way that's perfection. I'm going to do this assignment that God has given me. And then when the new season opens, I'm going to be able to embrace it with open arms and a new strength. And so just understanding that just because you're said behind the scenes, like God still sees you. And ultimately, that's who you're doing this for. Because if you're striving for man to see you, it's going to have a whole different world of worldly pressures that God never called us to have.
Yeah.
And I think preparing our hearts for that. And I know it's hard in this. I feel like, and it happens to me quite often. Like if I get upset about something or jealous that something else happened, and I'm like, hey, like half the time I don't think people know who the marketing director at Union Church is. And if I allowed myself to worry about that too much, it would end up being like about me.
Yeah.
And so I had to take a step back and ask myself, like, why do I care so much? And not in like a negative way,
Right.
but it's like, did something creep into my heart that wasn't supposed to be there? Because ultimately I never want that to happen. I'm constantly praying for God to search my heart and make it clean constantly, because it's easy. I think a lot of times we think because we're in ministry, we don't fall victim to the things that the world does, where it's like we get jealous when other people get promoted before us or people get different assignments. We all we still have that happen to us too. So it's asking God, like, clean my heart, because you have me here for a reason.
Yeah.
You have me here and not there for a reason, and I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to fall into this pride that I deserve something when really, like, I deserve what God gives me and to steward that well. And so I would just say to them, like, really search your heart and know what you want and pray about it and just surrender it to God. The minute you surrender your desire to be seen to God, He will do so much when you surrender that. So much. But it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Oh, yeah,
especially when you're like the one writing all the things. You're like, I did that.
Right.
But really, God helped you do that in a way that's great because He gave you that gift.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's ultimately like pointing everything back to Him. Yeah.
That was such a good answer, Natasha.
Oh, thanks. But I've lived that.
Oh,
I have lived that really hardcore in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to like see your work or follow you or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can follow me on Instagram.
Okay.
It's Graceful Fashionista. And I combined both worlds when I was a Christian and in fashion, and I just never got rid of the name. Yeah. And so, I talk about all things. I talk about marketing. I talk about books. I'm a big reader. So, and then that's pretty much all I have. I have a TikTok, but it's Graceful Fashionista. Not original at all.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. Thank you so much for coming out here today.
Me.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time and all of your thoughts.
Thank you. I enjoyed being here. This is great.
Oh, good. Thank you guys so much for spending time with us today. I really loved having you here. If you liked this episode, make sure you share it with someone you know. I'd also love if you guys would comment any questions you might have that we can answer on future episodes. remember that each one of you was born for such a time as this. Until next time, bye!